The way I see it, there's really only one possibility, and I'll explain my reasoning. We live in a world of chaos where God plays dice, and there's no true theory of everything. Because if there is an explanation for everything, the problem with that is that there's no explanation for anything. Because if everything has a cause, then everything that causes something has to have a cause, and you end up going down this stream of events, and you're like, oh, well, this is because of this thing, and this thing's because of this thing, and this thing's because of this thing. But you can never actually get to a point where there's an end, because for every action to happen, there needs to be a cause if the world is not is not just random chance and chaos. And so no matter how far you dig into the workings of the universe, you will never find a true solution. And if you do find, oh, there's nothing more than this is as deep as it goes, then what caused that? If you do find a solution where, all the answers are answered by this one thing, how is that not any more miraculous than God itself? That this one thing causes everything to happen. And I don't see that kind of ever being something we discover. I think that no matter how far you go, you're going to realize there's more. I don't know. Take this for example, There's a dandelion growing in my lawn. Why is there a dandelion growing in my lawn? Well, if we go back in time, we see I plucked a dandelion that was, growing, and it was at the point where it's the white poofy seeds are out, and I made a wish on it. I blew, and then all the seeds floated off, and then boom, some of them landed back in my lawn, and then from that seed, eventually a new dandelion grows up, and that's why there's this dandelion in my lawn. And you say, okay, well, the cause of this dandelion being here, you trace it all the way back, is me. But then you say, okay, well, if I blew the dandelion, why did I do that? And you go through all these things, and you try and figure out what made me do it, and you find all these explanations and everything, and okay, finally, we know exactly why I did it. And this could break down to the atoms and the molecules and the whole entropy of the universe. Like, that could get so deep. And then you get to it, and you finally find the true answer. But then you're like, okay, well, why was there a dandelion there for him to blow in the first place? And then, you just keep going, and you keep going, and you eventually, if you take this and you extrapolate it way back, not that you possibly could, but if you did, you're going to end up back at the quote-unquote Big Bang. But then you're stuck at this problem. It's okay, well, what caused that? And you can't just say, oh, that was random chance, because your whole thing is that there is no random chance, and everything has an explanation. And you're screwed. Because, if you were to take the Big Bang and replace God with the Big Bang, it changes nothing. If you were to say the Big Bang created the universe, but instead of saying the Big Bang, you say God created the universe, what have you changed? You don't know what the Big Bang is. Why is the Big Bang not God? So, pretty much what I'm saying is I think we live in a world of chaos, because I don't see how we could possibly be in a world of laws and rules. I think there's laws and rules that have come from the chaos, and this goes into another thought that I have had recently that kind of backs this up. Is I believe that from chaos comes order, but the whole concept of order and laws and rules and explanations, it's made up. We have found things that are true for the universe, But just because they work doesn't mean there's order, doesn't mean there's logic. The universe doesn't care about logic. That's a human thing. So to us, you throw a ball in the air, it comes falling back down. That makes sense. That's just how the world is. That makes sense to us. But if you really, look at it from an outside perspective, why does that make sense? What makes that more orderly than chaotic? And you could say, oh well, because it always falls down. That's order. That brings order. But how is order? I don't know how to really say this in a way that I can get it across clearly. But what makes order not chaos? I don't like for a long time. I thought, there's order and there's chaos, and from the chaos, comes order. But the reality is that there is no such thing as order, and you could even say there's really no such thing as chaos. They're the same thing. There's only chaos, and we just happen to interpret interpret the chaos as order because we've lived in this world where you know we've made sense of the chaos. But really, realistically, nothing actually makes sense. It doesn't make sense that any of this stuff is the way it is. It just is the way it is, and we've come to accept that, and we say, okay, well, this is how it's been, so that makes sense. And we've just kind of taken these laws of the universe for granted, and we say, this is the law, this is the rules, this is how the universe works. And I don't think it's necessarily that this is how the universe works. It's just that the universe is, and as a result of the universe being, it's evolved into this complex structure. How it started, where it started, I don't know if it never necessarily even, I don't even know if that's even a reasonable question to ask. As I said, I don't think there is a certain defining point where things just started, because to our minds that just it doesn't make sense for things to have started from nothing. For things to just appear out of nowhere, it doesn't compute in our brain. There has to be an explanation, there has to be a reason. And if that's the case, then infinity is infinity, and you know there's no way to really know where it started or it began. And honestly, most likely it's more of a loop than anything. um, but it really is a crazy thing. But I don't really think that you know there is this separation between order and chaos. I think we've created this separation. There's no separation really if you think about it technically for cold and hot. There is no cold or hot. It's just heat. It's just different levels of heat, different levels of energy. you know and we've created these terms to describe and understand better. But realistically, you know it's just more or less of heat. It's not there's no line where it's like, okay, from this point on is cold and from this point on is hot, because depending on what you're using, it's subjective. For like a piece of metal would be able to sit in a fire and not melt, whereas we would be like, that's hot, we can't sit in a fire. you know so what you consider hot and what you consider cold is relative. For us, oh, that's cold. That water is literally freezing. It's ice. There's ice in this water, and then you see like penguins and seals just chilling in it. They don't see it as cold water. That's just water to them. You know, it's a relative term. It's not. There's not really that defining line there. Light and darkness. It's not really that there's light or there's really darkness. It's really the same thing. If there's no light, you're in darkness, but if there is light, there's no darkness. So really, it's just light there either is or isn't light. There is not this duality there. They're one and the same. Um, and I think you can really use this for a whole lot of things, but I think the whole idea of order and chaos it's one and the same thing. There is no such thing as order. There is only chaos. Um, but I don't think that's necessarily a thought that a lot of people want to think about, because they like to believe that, as humans, we've developed this kind of affection for order and organization. We like things to be perfectly lined up and everything to work as it should. We don't like things being messy. We don't. It's just not how our brains have developed. And so we've kind of segregated chaos and order, and order's the ideal thing, but order is just in our heads, and really it's all chaos. Um, and this is the problem that I'm kind of getting into is this let me wonder what's the difference between them and I. I don't believe anything but our perspective. Like our perspective, like that's another thing that I was kind of thinking about. Like the perspective of a human is so crazy, and we really can't imagine a perspective from a different point of view because we're human, and it's really hard to kind of step out of the shoes of a human and think from a different perspective because we don't even know what a different perspective from a human necessarily would be. It's really hard to kind of say, okay, let me just step out of out of these human shoes and look at it from, like, I don't know, a dog's perspective. Like, it's really hard for us to kind of do something like that because how can you really get into the mind of a dog? You don't know how the mind of a dog really works. We have a good idea of how the mind of a dog works, but we couldn't possibly know it unless we were dogs ourselves, which if you were a dog, then you're not a human, and then you wouldn't be able to understand a human's perspective. But that's a whole nother thing. I don't know. It's just the perspective of a human, like I was saying, um, it's a very subjective point of view, and as I said, we really like our order and stuff, and we like to kind of give things meaning. But if everything's chaos, which I believe that everything really is chaos, and I don't necessarily think that means that um, nothing matters, because I'll explain this in just a second because I'm about to contradict myself. But realistically, nothing does matter. Nothing really does matter. But because nothing matters, everything can matter 100%. If you decided that you found a flower, that flower could be the most valuable thing in the world, and it matters more than your own life. You could literally sacrifice yourself to save a flower, and that may be a hilarious thing to think. Oh, this person literally just sacrificed their life to save a flower. But at the end of the day, did your life really have more meaning than the flower? I mean, sorry to say it, but probably not. If you look at the grand scheme of time and the scale of the universe, think about how many billions of years it's been since the quote unquote Big Bang that we've got going here, and we say that, oh, that's the start of time, but who's really to say that that's the start of time? You know, so humans, like on the grand scale of time itself, just on the Earth, like just on the Earth is like the tiniest little speck, but in the scale of the universe, basically, we're negligible. So to kind of say, oh yes, my life has more meaning is just your perspective. Obviously, you think that you have more value because it's your life. Um, but as I was saying, this is kind of the problem that I get into is fighting with myself over, if everything is equally extremely valuable and and worth nothing at all, where do you draw that line? How do you balance that kind of lifestyle where you're trying to live, you know, life and enjoy life as it is, but also with that understanding that everything you do is technically meaningless and there's really no reason to do it in the first place, but you do it all the same just because you can, you know. Um, I truly believe that the main purpose to living life is to experience it and enjoy it, and there's nothing else. Um, there's nothing else to be said. If you're here and you're just kind of going through the motions and you're not truly experiencing and being present and enjoying the moment, then you're failing. And it's not, it's really not that hard to do, to take a minute and enjoy just whatever it is that you could be having going on in your life. And I'm not saying that everyone's lives are perfect and you never have anything wrong going on in your life, but even when things are their absolute worst, there are still beautiful things around you. The reality is there are. And to get really dark, um it's not necessarily always easy to be present in the moment, but even I don't know. I feel like me saying this is a little hypocritical because I haven't truly experienced what I would call true suffering is. But even when you are suffering, there are beautiful moments. And I don't know how necessarily to describe them, but you just kind of have to take a look, take a step back and look, and I guarantee you'll find something that you can say, "Wow, that's beautiful," or you know, um, that's cool. Um, but that's really not important. That's really not, that's really not that important. If you don't want to do that and you don't think you can, it really doesn't matter. But I do think that your life will be more enjoyable if you do. Um, so I recommend giving it a try. The worst thing that happens is your life still sucks. So I don't really see what the harm is in trying. Um, and it doesn't take a whole lot of effort to do. But I'm getting trying to get back to what I was saying is this one thing I'm struggling with is that um uh it's hard to tell if um I'm just like my mind is deteriorating and I'm going crazy slowly, or or it is me waking up and realizing what the world truly is and what it is that's going on here. And it's hard to say either way what's going on, because to the average person, what like I get my view on life is crazy. And if I were to act um I guess how I truly and truly embrace my mindset, I would 100% get locked up, because to act in a chaotic manner is crazy. You're seen as crazy if your behavior is not controlled, if it's not what is expected of a person. If you have a behavior that doesn't fit the norm, it makes people uneasy because we like our order, we like chaos, and this unpredictability is dangerous. And so you're a crazy person. We don't want crazy people in our society. We don't want crazy to be the norm. We have to keep that under control. But honestly, being completely sane and quote unquote fitting the norm is just as crazy. If you really think about it, like acting like everyone acting um in an organized and uh I guess polite manner is just as crazy as acting crazy. It's just that's not how it's seen. If everyone was completely chaotic and um everyone was quote unquote crazy, then no one would be crazy. But because no one's quote unquote crazy, you know, no one's crazy. I don't know if that made sense. But going back to what I was saying, you know, it's hard to tell which way I'm going. I'm not necessarily afraid. I would like not to be a crazy person. I would like not for that to be the case. And I would like to actually be onto something. But, I guess there's only time will tell. But, either way it go, like I said, I'll be seen as crazy. So there's really no winning. Which is why I kind of want to you just kind of check out sort of and have my own land. I could do whatever I want. And I do enjoy kind of my own being by myself because I don't have to worry about someone being like, you're crazy. Because yes, I am, but not like that, um, but uh, I tell myself, um, if you think you're crazy or if you're cognizant that you're crazy, then you probably aren't crazy. But that also may just be what a crazy person tells themselves. So, it's really hard to say if it's delusion or enlightenment, because all the like, because I think about like all these um, people, monks and stuff chasing enlightenment, and I'd like to think that like what they're going after is kind of what I'm thinking about, but like it's really it's kind of crazy. I don't it sounds like what a monk is chasing after is not enlightenment but insanity. Which is kind of funny. But I do think that a person who's seen as insane in the world might be someone that's actually found bliss. And that's kind of funny to think that like a person that's crazy is actually um, someone that may have figured out how to live life the best way, um, at least in their from their perspective, um, which is kind of interesting. I don't know. Maybe it's not. Maybe I'm talking nonsense. I don't know. But because I really don't want to be seen as this crazy person, I'm doing my best to try and keep myself, uh, grounded in this so-called reality, because I feel like my concept of reality and like my sense of meaning and my drive and like purpose is slowly kind of eroding. It's like, okay, yep, we got to keep going to work and we got to keep doing these things so that we can, you know, make money to, get property and we'll build a family and then, try and make enough money to make a difference in the world and, you know, do all these things. But a part of me is like, or we could just not do any of those things and be just as happy, Because, like, I would love to help the world out, but at the same time, like, I'd be fine just not doing that. It's because that's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. And, I don't, like, it wouldn't necessarily make me any more happier to do all of that than it would for me to just kind of get my little plot of land and putz around on it until my time has come. There's really, to me, it, neither one's a worse or better option. It's just a matter of which one do I choose. And I'm I'm doing my best to try and I guess build a following. I don't know if making talks like this is the best way to go about it, but it just I don't know. a lot of this world just doesn't make any sense, and it doesn't have to. But I just it's something doesn't feel quite right. But I don't know really what else to say about it. You know, it like I'm not like I literally just said that the whole world is chaos, and so nothing really has reason. But like the but that's I don't know. I feel like that's just kind of part of the whole thing. You know, like it doesn't. None of this makes any sense. And it just something feels off. Something feels off to me. I don't know. But um pretty much my options are either stand at the, stand at the water's edge and gaze off into the horizon and wonder what's out there, or I dive in, and swim as far as I can and hope that I don't drown. There's I don't know what I should do, but it's a scary thing to kind of think like, do I jump in or do I sit back, and like I said, like I truly think that the main purpose of life is to just kind of enjoy it. And if I take that step and I dive into the water, I'm worried that I'm going to really kind of lose that, because when you're playing a video game, you want to be immersed in it. You want to be, or when you're watching a movie or a TV show, it's the most enjoyable when, or like even if you're like reading a book, like, when you're in it and you're truly immersed in it and you're, you know, attached to the story and you're following it along, and well, that's when it's really good. And if I take that next step and I kind of detach myself from the world as it is, I think that it's going to lose some of that charm. It's definitely going to it's still beautiful, but you know, once you've looked behind the curtain and you kind of see what's going on, it kind of ruins the show, Once you see the puppet master behind the scene moving the puppets, you know, some of that like mystery and some of that magic of the whole thing, seeing a magician do its act and then finding out how he did his tricks or how they did their tricks, it kind of takes it ruins the whole thing. So it's really, I could, you know, try and pursue that, but the question is, is it really are you really enlightened doing that, or are you more enlightened realizing that you could, but choosing not to? And that's kind of the question that I've been wondering for a while now. Is like, am I more enlightened to live in the world and enjoy the experiences that are here, or is it better to kind of take that next leap of faith, basically? Because the reality is I don't know what else could be out there that I'm missing out on, and maybe um, I'm in denial right now and saying it's not worth the risk. Leave good enough alone, and maybe there's so much better out there. But it's really hard to say either way of what it is. But I feel like I'm saying a lot of stuff that I don't necessarily know if everyone else will really care to listen to or think is worth listening to. Think that it even really makes sense. But this is kind of a culmination of a whole bunch of thoughts that I've been having. Some of them more recent, some of them for a while now. But um, you know, basically, I'm just kind of saying all this now, hoping that someone else out there gets what I mean, and is like, yeah, no, you're not crazy, like I feel the same way. The only problem with that is like, even if I could get like 1,000 people to agree with me that like I'm not crazy and they feel the same way, that doesn't necessarily prove that I'm not crazy. It could just prove that we're all crazy, which is funny. But um, you crazy is only crazy till others believe it too. Uh, And so it really doesn't matter. Maybe we'll start out as the crazy people, but over time, people will realize, hey, maybe maybe they're onto something here. And that's kind of part of what I was talking about, like trying to start a following. And I don't mean like a following. Like I don't want the problem is that I don't want a cult. I don't want to start a religion. I don't want a cult. I just want people to live. But I feel like if I could actually build a following, it's almost impossible not to have a cult. And anyone that looks at it from the outside will say, that's a cult. I don't want a cult. I just want people to realize that, maybe there's a better way to live. But, you know, until people start living that way and realize, hey, yo, you're right. It's going to be seen as crazy. People saying, I things people saying like, oh, one day we're gonna fly across the sky in planes. That was seen as crazy until it was done. Um, and I don't know if that's a one-to-one uh, comparison there, but basically what I'm saying is um, I'd love to take the leap, but I don't know if it's worth it to go alone. Um, there's one video that I watched where it's like there's there's one person who's crazy, right? And everyone looks at him, and it's like it's like I don't know what the YouTube video is called, but there's this dude at a rave. Basically, no one's dancing, but he's just getting down. He is boogieing, and everyone's just kind of looking at him, and he's like, "That's a crazy person." And then another guy decides, "I'm gonna join in," and he starts dancing with him. And then his friends come and they start dancing with him. And then all of a sudden, everyone starts dancing with this guy. And everyone thought he was crazy. Everyone thought this guy was a crazy person. And then everyone else started dancing. And now you're crazy not to dance. you know? And I think that's a pretty good analogy because, um, you know, dancing is, you're having a good time, you're enjoying the world, and you're acting crazy. And um, I think that uh, we that's kind of what I'm going for. And I don't want absolute chaos. I don't want anarchy. I'm not saying there can't be any order, but I do think that um, some things in life don't need to be the way they are just in general. I think that if we really wanted to, we could solve 80 to 90% of the world's problems, but everyone's too caught up in their own, heads and ideas to see the solutions. No one wants to really concede uh, and come to a compromise because they think that their ideas are the right ideas. And that's also part of my dilemma is like I don't want to convert all of you people to be following me because what if I'm wrong? you know, what if my what I think is the best way to live is wrong? What if it's not really the case? What if um my idea ends up causing more harm than good in the long run? Because every villain in history thought they were the good guy. Thought they were and they weren't doing it because they just wanted to see the world burn. Maybe some people did, but most people thought that they were going to save the world with their actions, or they were going to save their people with their actions. They didn't necessarily do it thinking they were the bad guy. And that's probably one of my biggest concerns and why I don't really want it to be a cult is because I don't want to lead people astray. Just because I think this is the right path doesn't necessarily mean that it is. Which is why I'm kind of hoping to lead people into thought and let them think about it for themselves and kind of come to their own conclusion of how they want to live rather than telling them this is the way and there's no other options. I feel like when you restrict people's choice and you tell them this is how to properly live your life, this is the rules, which is basically what religion is, I feel like that's not right. And that's a part of the reason why I'm not a big fan of religion. I don't like all these restrictions and laws on what exactly is the right and wrong way to live. I don't necessarily think there is such a thing, but there are actions that can be seen as definitely not definitely not the best. Like killing people just because you can doesn't, even if, quote unquote, no one's life means anything, doesn't mean that you can just go around killing people because, like I said, if no one's life means anything, everyone's life means everything. So, their life is 10 times more valuable than yours and also not at all at the same time. Um, which is contradictory, but that's just the world of chaos, honestly. So that's how it is. I don't know. I may have talked in circles a little bit there, but I do enjoy I do enjoy my little rants. So that's what that was. Peace out.